We have a terrific panel joining us on the show today, starting with Onir, renowned filmmaker and one of the most prominent voices on LGBTQ rights. We also have with us Jerry Johnson, an LGBTQ activist. We're also hoping to be joined in a moment by Sonal Jiani, an LGBTQ activist as well. All right, we have all three of them. Welcome to the show. Onir, let me begin with you. Of course, the hearing is far from over. Day-to-day hearings, as we know, are taking place in the Supreme Court. Now, what certainly struck me are a couple of these observations that were made by the Supreme Court yesterday, where the court said to the centre that it was making a value judgment. The court said there is no absolute concept of a man or woman. It is far more complex than one's genitals. And the court then went on to say it's not mandatory that the whole society should accept something for the courts to recognize the rights of one section. The question I want to simply ask you is, how much hope does this offer you and the LGBTQ community? Do you believe the Supreme Court of India will rise to the occasion and legalize same-sex marriage?
I strongly believe and want to hope, and that's my hope, like a lot of us, that the Supreme Court will stand up for the democratic rights of such a huge, minorities, even if we are called minorities, actually we are a huge population who have been deprived of our constitutional right, of our rights as equal citizens of this country. And I feel that all the arguments that comes across, just are desperate move to stop us from achieving, getting our equal rights, and most of them just don't make any sense, because nothing in society should be static, because we are as a society meant to change, be it in terms of religion, culture, everything, to become better. Why should any law, any culture be something which takes away happiness from another person?
Absolutely. Now, Onir, the stand of the government of India doesn't really come as a surprise, because it's been known widely for a long time now. However, how did you react when you first heard that the centre's lawyer argued in the Supreme Court yesterday that the construct of same-sex marriage not only undermines religious and social values in India, but in fact, the demand for it reflects urban elitist views?
It was honestly very disappointing. Not surprising, but disappointing. Disappointing in various levels. When firstly it calls it an urban elitist, they don't understand the basic thing that sexuality or gender is not based on caste, class, religion, or race. It's there beyond that. It's what you're born as. And by doing this, they are kind of undermining and disrespecting the aspirations of millions of people who live in rural India, who are from the LGBTQI plus community and who have dreams, who have aspirations, who want to live a dignified life. And also, I think the very basic problem is we are living in a secular democratic country, and by the constitution, every minority should have full rights. So even as minorities, we deserve the right as any other citizen of the country to marry, to have property together, and all those things that come with a marriage. The rights to marriage is not just about a ceremony, but about various other rights that is associated with marriage, and that is something that we have been deprived of. And that is, so it was disappointing, because one thought that, after so many years, after the decriminalization of homosexuality by the Supreme Court, that the center would have made an effort to educate themselves. Our politicians would have made an effort to educate themselves that how wrong is this to deprive us of our basic rights.
All right. You are, of course, disappointed with the stand of the centre, but the ball is really in the court of the Supreme Court now. Another argument that the centre has made, though, Onir, is that any such decision ought to be taken by India's parliament. and cannot be done by the judiciary. Now, that is, of course, a legal argument, not so much a social argument. How do you respond to that?
I feel that, if Indian Parliament really cared about the, LGBTQI community, it would have on its own taken up this responsibility years ago. And every time, even before the 2018 judgment, every time it's been brought up in the Parliament, it's been immediately, it has been voted out. Shashi Tharoor has done that earlier, and our lives can't be eternally on hold because we have a parliament where full of homophobic people. They need to educate themselves and become inclusive. How can, already a lifetime is gone, just waiting for being equal citizens. And so how long do you want us to keep waiting? Because these people are just, incapable of recognizing our love, our lives, And, even in panel discussions, when I sit and hear the agreement, I look at them and I think that when I look at them, I don't want to take away any of their rights. I want them to lead happy lives. So why do they look at us and feel so insecure and want us not to find happiness and fulfillment of life? It comes from extremely narrow-minded way of thinking.
Well, there is no doubt that successive governments, whether Congress governments or BJP governments at the centre, have refused to take a progressive stand on this issue. I think you're quite right in pointing out that if Indian Parliament had to do it, they would have probably done it a long time ago. And it's their failure that has now led to this day where this case is before the Supreme Court of India. Now, let me ask you this. Of course, Mukul Rohtagi, who appeared for the petitioners, argued that we are not going to be treated as lesser mortals in this country. We want the same rights as our heterosexual compatriots. We want to be allowed to live with dignity. We want our freedom. We want our privacy. But, two of the petitioners, Onir, Kavita Arora and Ankita Khanna, a couple who've been together for 11 years, have made the argument that it's not just social justice and equality that they seek, that same-sex marriage needs to be legalized in India for some very practical reasons, as they point out. As a couple, we need a joint bank account. We need to be able to give each other medical consent. We need to be legally recognized for inheritance. Now, are these not very significant and valid issues that usually impact the LGBTQ community?
Absolutely, and I feel that this is what we are trying to explain, that it's not just about a religious ceremony of marriage that we're talking about, but all these rights. I know of friends, gay couples, when one lost a partner, he didn't even have the right to take the body, because legally he's nobody. Today, if your partner is ill or needs any emergency treatment at a hospital, you cannot sign because you're legally not entitled to. And these are extremely cruel situations. And I feel that why don't these people who are opposing understand this? How is, today, if I'm getting married, how does it affect the life of my neighbor? Is their marriage going to fall apart? Is the heterosexual, institute of marriage so fragile that the minute someone else is given their right, everything falls apart in that society?
Absolutely. Onir, before I move on to the other panelists, I need to get your reaction to a statement that was recently made by the NCPCR, the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. I personally found this statement to be rather disturbing and preposterous. NCPCR, in its submission to the Supreme Court, said allowing adoption to same-sex couples is akin to endangering the children. Isn't this an extremely homophobic, ignorant and downright dangerous statement to make? And this is coming from NCPCR.
Homophobic and dangerous because, and also comes from not acknowledging the fact that, in India, unfortunately, child abuse is rampant. And that mostly happens in a very heterosexual, setup where boys and girls get abused. And that is a problem that needs to be addressed overall. And it has nothing to do with good parenting, has nothing to do with the sexuality of the parents. And, like all other human beings. There are people with flaws. There are queer couples who will be flawed, and there will be wonderful parents who can give love. And how can you want to deprive so many orphans who live in miserable conditions from finding home, from finding love, and it's also very insulting to think that every queer person is only interested in abuse. I mean, it is absolutely homophobic, absolutely unacceptable, and very, very cruel.
It's cruel because it is tantamount to practically labeling every gay person as being a pedophile. It's that dangerous.